I'm Beth, and these are my memories. To the complex and precious people who appear in them, thank you. I forgive you, and I'm sorry. You shaped me, and I carry you still. In remembering, I've come to see us all more clearly, not as villains or saints, but as humans doing the best we knew how. I must have forgotten. Until now. Fowler had certainly been a complicated, difficult time. We had moved there towards what we thought was our family's future. But like the tomatoes under the black walnut, our growth had been thwarted. We had shriveled on the vine. I had spent third and fourth grades there, never really finding my way, unless running around town with a lemon yellow skateboard counted. Dad had moved out and stayed in a rooming house for a few months while he figured out what he wanted to do next. He had eventually decided that the partnership in the business wasn't working out. So he had moved into an apartment in Lafayette and taken a job at Peerless Wire. Mom had started working, although I don't remember what her first job was. It didn't make sense for Mom and us kids to stay in Fowler when our family were all in Lafayette, or near it. Mom bought a little house on Euland Lane in Lafayette that she, Judith, Tommy, and I moved into. Mom's mom used to stop by our little house in the morning about once a week and bring us donuts on her way to work at the Lafayette Journal and Courier newspaper.
Kids, it's Grandma. Come give me a quick hug.
I'm sure she was happy to have us close enough to stop by without any fanfare. Just casual donuts and morning hugs before school. Grandma Helen had not made us many clothes in the last couple of years because we were getting so big. The donuts were probably helping with that. But she had saved all of those fabric cuttings and made each of us a patchwork quilt. I still have the one she gave me, and I can still look at the colorful squares and hear the sound of her sewing machine and picture the little polyester outfits she had made for us when we were little. It was a tiny, white, aluminum-sided post-World War II home and looked very similar to a lot of other houses on the surrounding streets. We were on the corner of a four-house cul-de-sac, ours being one of the four, and had a huge flagpole in the front yard. I don't think we ever once raised a flag on that huge pole. Not one time. Ironic, considering we moved there in the midst of the 1976 bicentennial. Everything was red, white, and blue that year. Maggie's mom, Janice, had even bought a little white bicentennial Chevy Nova hatchback with red and blue racing stripes. Years later, that car would be the one I learned how to drive a stick shift in. The original garage in the Euland Lane house had been closed off and turned into a family room with space for a dinner table. This room was heated with electric baseboard heaters. The heaters scorched the furry brown couch that we had bought in Fowler when we pushed it too close to the wall. We were lucky not to burn the house down.
Does anybody else smell smoke?
Judith and I moved into the primary bedroom because we had to share. We wanted to decorate our room with red, white, and blue because everything in the country that year was in flag colors. Mom came home one day with a huge dark blue carpet remnant that had been folded and left creases that crisscrossed the floor as long as we lived there. She let us paint the walls a light blue, the wood trim a bright red, and bought us red curtains for the two windows we had in there. Each of us laid one of Grandma Helen's patchwork quilts over rainbow bed sheets, yellow, orange, red, and blue bands arching across our pillows, then stretching straight down and vanishing beneath the quilts. You could have walked into half of our friends' bedrooms that year and seen the same sheets. We also collected pull tabs from soft drink and beer cans and made a door curtain out of them. This thing was sharp and unforgiving. Maybe it looked cheap and tacky, but no intruder was getting past it unscathed or unheard. The jingle rattle of those linked strands was our early warning system. You had to get through it before even reaching the doorknob. And since I don't remember us ever washing those little metal shards before folding them together into chains, I suspect a cut could have led to a whole host of nasty infections. Mom took the second small bedroom that could barely fit a single bed. She wedged a chest of drawers in between the foot of the bed and the wall, but otherwise had little room for storage. But she didn't act bitter about taking that little room. Built for a child in 1950 when closets were smaller, possessions were lighter, and expectations were preordained. Next to Mom's door was the one bathroom which had carpet in it and a little closet with an accordion door. One year in shop class, Judith made a hanging shelf that was suspended over the toilet from ceiling hooks with several shelves on macrame cables. Judith also started the macrame craze in our house as we each made plant hangers for our own spider plants. We tended to them like pets, excitedly discussing how many babies we had at any given time.
These things are taking over the house.
Spider plants for my family were like baseball cards for other kids. Tommy's room was really a hallway that had used to lead to the garage. So he had a door on one end across from the bathroom that he placed his bed in front of to prevent people from using his room as a shortcut through the house. The other end of his makeshift bedroom was just an opening into the family room. No door. Privacy wasn't even an option. If we were watching TV, Tommy listened to TV whether he wanted to or not. Next to Tommy's room was the laundry room that had an attic access. Tommy and I used to climb on top of the washing machine to pull ourselves up into the attic to play up there. It sloped on both sides under the rafters and was cramped overhead, but there was a plank floor. Lights built in through a gable vent, enough to make the space glow without a flashlight. It felt like a secret room that only he and I knew about. I remember how bossy I was with him when we played, always trying to make him say what I wanted, like it was coming from a script.
Okay, I'll say this, and then you say that.
Usually he complied because I was older. Looking back, I think he just liked the attention, having one of his big sisters take the time to play with him. Our living room had olive green patterned loop carpet that had to be as old as the house, and this room was where the stereo was. We would sit and listen to vinyl records on the turntable or turn on the radio, waiting to record a song on our little matching cassette recorders that Dad bought us for Christmas one year. Tiny microphone hanging off over the top of the speaker, finger hovering over the record button, wishing the DJ would stop talking so we could catch the song as cleanly as possible. Most of those recordings had at least a few words of that smarmy 1970s DJ voice, because we couldn't wait any longer.
Coming up next, we have the sensational boys from Scotland, the Bay City Rollers, singing I Only Wanna Be With You.
The living room also had the front door and a large picture window. The only time that door was ever opened was when someone knocked on it to try to sell us something. That door wasn't for us, it was for strangers. We had a fluffy white dog named Nicky that we had brought from Fowler. He lived outside on a chain. One time in Fowler, Tommy had taken this pooch for a walk. The dog had bolted. The chain pulled all the way through Tommy's palm, and the last link shredded his hand. He had run into the house, panicking and hysterical. Judith had spoken calmly to him, helping him settle down while she wrapped his hand. Then she called for help. My parents were both very impressed with Judith's calm and mature handling of the situation. It must have been very scary, and poor Tommy had been so little, only about 5 when it happened. Someone went out and found Nicky and brought him home. Then he had come with us to Ewan Lane. While we loved him, we were not nearly attentive enough to him. One day I came home from school, and he was gone. Someone had called the dog catcher to come pick him up because he barked all day. I tried to call the dog pound to find out where he was, but he didn't have tags. Back then, we only took pets to the vet to get rabies shots, and he didn't have one. Without tags, he was just another stray. Just a fluffy white dog in a cage. They couldn't even be sure if the dog that matched his description was Nicky, but I think he probably was. Neither of my parents would take me to the pound to try to claim him and bring him home. He was so cute and friendly. I want to believe someone would have adopted him. And they would have given him a better home than we had. People back then, at least where we lived, didn't make their pets part of their families. We, our family, treated him like lawn furniture. I hate to think about it now. Nicky deserved better than the life we gave him, and I hope he found it. After losing Nicky, I started to see more clearly that animals deserve love and dignity just like people do. Even as I felt the ache of losing Nicky, life at Yulin Lane was moving in a positive direction. Judith and I both made friends at our new schools. She went to Sunnyside Junior High for her freshman year, and I went to Benton Elementary for 5th grade. Tommy was 6 and in 1st grade at Benton too. It was another transition, but Fowler was behind us. This felt like rebuilding. It felt like progress here. We lived within walking distance to my Grandma Irene's house. My dad's dad had died only a year earlier, and to me that seemed like a decade ago, but to Grandma, it was yesterday. I would walk or ride my bike or the lemon yellow hand squisher to her house often. It's strange to think about it now, but Grandma then was barely older than I am now. But she had arthritic hands that were gnarled and painful. She had enormous bunions on her feet. She had gone gray years earlier. I thought of her as old, but she was really only just past middle age. Sometimes she and I would get on the city bus and ride out to the Tippecanoe Mall, which was still brand new back then. We would eat at Burger King, and she would eat half of her Whopper, taking the other half home for later. We would get back to her house, toting a few bags of school clothes or wildly colorful underwear for me, so loud they could have doubled as traffic signals. I think she knew Mom was trying her best, but was financially struggling. Mom had taken a job as a bank teller. Her boss there was a chauvinist and treated the women like they were idiots.
Oh, don't you try to understand how the bank runs, little lady. Just go on back there and make some more coffee.
It was demoralizing for Mom to work under those conditions, and I think seeing how men treated women in the workplace influenced her identity as a feminist. It was the time of ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment was going through the country.
Women's rights are human rights. Women's rights are human rights.
And women were finding their voices for their own advocacy. Helen Reddy still roared her womanhood from the radio, 4 years after that song was released. Mom was working, doing the best she could on what was surely not enough to live on. But we kids never suffered. Mom was resilient. She was generous with whatever she had, and she found creative ways to provide us with things that made us not really understand that we didn't have any money. But Grandma Irene knew, and bought me loud, gaudy, neon-patterned underwear. I later realized she didn't always show Judith the same generosity, which must have been painful for my sister. Grandma had met Judith as a toddler when Mom married Dad, so I suspect Grandma didn't feel quite as connected to her. But for Judith, who probably couldn't remember a time that Dad's mom wasn't Grandma, that had to hurt her feelings. It would have hurt mine, and it might still sting now. There was one row of houses between the Yulin Lane house and the railroad tracks. Tommy and I went there in the winter to sled down the abutment for the overpass of Highway 52. The last time we did this, with our wooden sled on its metal runners, we were speeding through at least 2 feet of snow towards the long open field at the bottom, alongside the tracks. Up slowly, down faster every time. We were having so much fun. It was thrilling and cold and joyful. When it was my turn again, I dragged that sled back up to the top and picked a different spot because we had stomped the snow down in all of our previous tracks. I sat down on the hard wooden sled and put my feet on the steering yoke at the front, grabbed the rope, and off I went. Even the fresh snow was packy and fast. Everything I passed was a blur. Then suddenly, I hit a bump. A rock. I heard the metal runners screech over the obstruction, and I felt a blinding pain in my tailbone. I collapsed limply off the sled, rolling onto my back in the snow, and couldn't move. I could move, but I couldn't. My tailbone hurt like nothing I had ever experienced before. I wondered if I might die. Tommy was worried. He could see I was hurt and not getting up. He was not supposed to be in charge. He was not supposed to be the brave one. He was just little and had no idea how to help. He collected and brought back the sled and encouraged and tried to help me roll onto it. This little guy was going to try to pull me home.
Don't worry, big sister. I will help you.
I told him I couldn't get up on the sled. I said I just needed to lie there for a minute. The cold and damp seeped through my clothes. I was melting the spot where I lay, but the cold actually helped. It was numbing the sharp throbbing in my tailbone. I could move my feet and legs, which seemed like a good sign, but it was long, cold minutes before I could move around enough to try to get up. It still cramped and pounded painfully despite the cold. Somehow, between the two of us, I was on my feet. I rolled gingerly onto all fours and used the sled and Tommy's hands to help me rise. But there was no way I could sit on that sled, and I doubt Tommy could have pulled me all the way back to the house anyway. It was only one set of yards over, but those had fences, so we had to walk a whole block down, around a side street, and back up the block to home. But first I had to make it the rest of the way down the hill that had almost killed me. Every step was agony. I moved my feet only inches at a time, terrified of slipping and falling, sure that if I fell again, I would not get up. At long last, we reached the bottom of the slope. It had probably been more than an hour since I had gotten hurt. Tommy was cold and really needed to get warm, but he didn't complain. My little brother pulled the sled and walked very slowly with me back to the house. He kept asking if I was okay. He asked if he should run home and get Mom. I told him I would be all right. I just wanted to get to my bed. It felt like a miracle to walk back in the door and wriggle cautiously out of my coat while Tommy helped me get my boots off. I lay on my side in the fetal position under the quilt and tried not to move. Over the next few days, I regained my ability to sit on the couch, but not a hard chair. And the next week, I walked to school like usual and sat crooked in the seat to keep my tailbone from getting bumped. That was the very scary day that little Tommy saved me. Not physically, maybe, but his tenderness and care kept me from panicking through that frightening injury. Had it not been for him, I might have lain there all day. But knowing he would wait there in the cold, fearful for me until I could get up, was motivation to drag myself out of the snow. He was just little, but his care was enormous. The pain lingered. It throbbed for weeks before it started to let go. It felt tender for many months. I suspect I should have seen a doctor, but I never told Mom how bad it had hurt. I guess she knows now. I figured I had gotten up and managed to walk away. How bad could it be? Generation X thinking, if there ever was such a thing. Walk it off and don't complain. But Tommy's care was the exception, the proof that sometimes tenderness was stronger than toughness. She was never a really bad kid, but Judith did have a rebellious streak in her teens. There were always boys hanging around the house. She might have liked a few, but all of them liked her. Oddly, during her wildish phase, Judith let me orbit her world. We weren't anything alike, but she didn't completely shut me out. When her friends would come to the house, sometimes I got to sit in their group. But sometimes not, though. She would have me help her study for vocabulary tests or Spanish quizzes. For one of her vocabulary tests, she had the word laconic, and the given definition was brief. When I would read the word to her, the way she had remembered it was by saying underwear, like men's briefs, as a placeholder for brief. To this day, if I hear or read the word laconic, I hear underwear in my head.
Alex, I'll take laconic underwear for 1,000.
I also remember a few Spanish words and phrases, but I don't think she does anymore. I never had a need to ask for a bathroom in Spanish, but man, am I ready when called. ¿Dónde está el baño? Even in Mexico, you don't really have to ask that a lot. She would also sometimes let me go with her and her friends to the bowling alley on weekend nights. I was an erratic bowler at best. It took me the first 2 games to remember how to bowl. The third game was always pretty good, and by the fourth I was tired and terrible again. 3 games was my sweet spot. When the bowling alley closed, we would walk home from Market Square Shopping Center to the Yulin Lane house. In the winter, there were huge mountains. They had to be 15 feet high of dirty, chunky, gray snow, corralled in the parking lots. We would climb to the top like goats just to say we'd done it. The snow was so dirty and gross, we shouldn't have been touching it. One night, we were walking home from bowling and had gotten just about to the halfway point, coincidentally near my Grandma Irene's house, when a friend of Judith's rode by on a moped. Tired of walking, or maybe just flirting, she asked the guy on the moped to take her home and then come back to pick me up and take me home. I liked the idea of not walking the additional 15 minutes to home, but I wasn't crazy about standing in the street by myself in the middle of the night. Judith, again, always in charge, decided that I would wait at Grandma's house. Not inside, obviously, but the breezeway, where there was a porch swing. She said,
No one kidnaps kids from breezeways.
and wildcats and bears weren't going to come and eat me in the middle of town. This sounded sort of logical, so they left me in the driveway and off they went. I walked up to Grandma's breezeway and sat on the swing, but couldn't actually swing. It squeaked. I was more afraid of Grandma waking up and finding me there at midnight.
What on earth are you doing out here? Have you gone completely wild?
Than I was of kidnappers shoving me into a car trunk. I don't know what I would have done if that boy hadn't come back for me. I guess I would have been sitting in Grandma's porch swing in her breezeway when she woke up in the morning. Judith would have been in even more trouble than usual, and that's saying something. Luckily, the boy remembered where I was and came back for me. Grandma never found out about this. She would have strongly disapproved. She would have said it was the ruination of her granddaughters. Judith's friends were nice enough, but kind of what we called burnouts back then. I don't know if she was, but she was in her rebellious phase and did things she knew Mom and Dad wouldn't have liked. Mom would occasionally have people over to the house. Grown-up parties that weren't very rowdy, but some of her friends liked to get their fortunes told and they listened to music and drank. I don't think we ever were allowed to be at the parties. More likely we were probably at Grandma Helen's house. We weren't part of the festivities, but the leftovers lingered. One time on a morning following a party, there was an avocado green plastic drink pitcher of something sitting in the refrigerator. It was pretty full, and Mom just let it sit in there unbothered. She preferred a kind of cheap wine called Annie Greensprings. But she really didn't drink very often or very much. The mystery pitcher, the kind most families filled with Kool-Aid or orange juice, sat untouched in our refrigerator for days. At our house, it usually would have held Tang. I never liked real orange juice. It didn't taste like Tang and wasn't neon bright. Plus, there were little things that looked like bits of skin floating around in it. Mom was still working at the bank, and so we kids were alone when we got home. One day after school, Judith came into the house looking for a snack and decided to investigate that pitcher. It had been abandoned, so Judith decided it was fair game and poured herself a glass. She apparently liked what was in there, so she poured herself another glass. And possibly another one. Soon that avocado green pitcher was empty and in the sink. Whichever parent got to the house first and discovered that Judith had drunk the whole pitcher, which had been full of whiskey sours, and found her plastered and probably sick.
Something was wrong with Mom's Kool-Aid. I don't feel very good.
Must have been furious. But I wasn't there to witness this family drama. I only heard about it later. It was clear that my sister was in trouble. Judith also snuck out once in a while late at night to meet up with her burnout friends when Mom was asleep. One night she was trying to get back in the house, but found that someone had latched the sliding glass door that she had intended to slip back in through. She went to the door and found herself locked out. Tapping at the bedroom window above my bed, she tried to get me to go to the door and let her in.
Beth, I'm locked out. Go open the sliding glass door.
She saw me get up and walk out of our bedroom. Then I appeared inside the sliding glass door. Except then I scratched my head, turned around, and went back to bed. Judith was still locked out. Apparently, I was sleepwalking, or so snoozy that I didn't remember why I had walked out to the family room. Judith eventually had to wake up Mom to get back in the house. Mom was pretty mad. Again. Another time, she had washed dishes and put the plates away without drying them. Dad had opened the cabinet to get a plate out one night when he arrived after we had gone to bed, and water poured off the plate onto his clothes. He must have been at the end of his rope after a hard day, because he let out a holler about,
Why are these damn plates full of water?
And then grabbed a couple of them and hurled them down onto the kitchen floor. We had awakened to the shout and plate smashing, but had tried to be silent and invisible, hoping he didn't remember we were there. But he did remember. He made Judith get up to sweep up the broken shards and gave her a good talking to. That was the only time I heard Dad really snap, and it shook me. But I soon found out that Dad wasn't the only one struggling at that time, and it wasn't just Judith acting out. During our years on Newland Lane, we were all healing in some ways, growing, changing. We were figuring out who we were. And that wasn't just the kids. Mom and Dad were too. Mom had gotten married right out of high school and had been single again before Judith was even born. Later, she had married my dad and got 2 more kids to take care of. She spent all of those years tending to 3 munchkins and looking out for our needs. And now, in her early 30s, Mom was having anxiety. Anxiety about a life she never got to have, about freedom that she never experienced, about youth and how fleeting it is. There was a whole world out there, but she had been wedged into this little box her whole life. Women were told they didn't have a right to want more. They weren't supposed to need anything, but no one can keep that up forever. Everyone needs something. One day, I came home to the little house on Newland Lane, and Dad's car was parked outside. I went quietly into the house and didn't see either of my parents, but it didn't occur to me to go look for them even though they were obviously there. This house couldn't have been more than 1,000 square feet, so not immediately knowing where they were was strange. I went into the family room and sat down on the fluffy brown couch. I began to hear their voices, frustrated, arguing, Dad emphasizing that he couldn't do something. Mom insisted that he had to. He said again that it wasn't feasible. He didn't know how to make that work. Mom raised her voice in declarative tones and said to him,
One of these days, I'm going to just be gone, and you're not going to have a choice about it.
Finally, it dawned on me what was happening. She was asking him to take over the house so she could finally step out of it as a mother, a wife, a woman, and figure out who she was. I think at this point they had realized one of the kids had come into the house, and they cut short this conversation. But Dad got the message. A few weeks later, he did move into the house, and Mom went to live in Dad's apartment. A few months after that, she would move to Indianapolis for a truly new start. It was a leap of faith for her, and took a huge amount of courage, but she did it. She started out with no more than she could fit inside the Ford Maverick she called Betsy Blue. She worked hard and made friends, took a job, and set up a life and a home for herself. Mom hadn't run just to run. She had been trying to save herself. She had spent her whole life taking care of people, and she couldn't breathe. She had been suffocating under the weight of kids, finances, the patriarchy that told her she didn't matter. She was a free spirit desperate for a break, a chance to catch her breath. Of course, I didn't understand all of this then. I was sad, scared, confused. But I understand it now. Like the conversation I had witnessed in the car, when Dad had decided he needed to get out and move in a new direction. Mom needed that too. Neither of them had been prepared for all of this. The world had changed, and the role models they both had growing up didn't resonate in modern life. The idealistic, fictitious world their generation had been taught didn't exist. The 1970s were transitional in every sense, and their divorce had been an anomaly in both families. They had no North Star to guide them. My parents were figuring it out on the fly. But more than that, they were both humans, hurting, learning, a little bit scared, and doing the best they could at the time. Maybe that was the call of the wild. Not animals lurking outside Grandma's breezeway, not rebellion, not escape, but the quiet courage to ask for air. From a bicentennial bedroom to the breezeway outside Grandma's house, home was never just walls and rooms. It was the delicate, funny, scary moments that shaped us, and the family that shared that time. A little brother's found courage and loving care proof that tenderness can carry us through pain. A midnight moped ride, broken plates, and a mother's needful strides out into the world are calls of the wild, where rebellion and rupture can be acts of survival. Together, they reveal that life is more than a listing of what hurt us, but also a celebration of what healed us. The quiet strength of Tommy's concern, the wild courage of Mom's leap, the messy human ways we all just tried to breathe. This is the call of remembering and the yearning for becoming who we are. This is the bonfire of tender strength, of wild hearts. Thank you for listening. These are my memories, and maybe they echo yours too. I must have forgotten, but I remember now. If this episode stirred something in you, please consider sharing it, subscribing, or leaving a review. Sound design for this episode includes excerpts from MuseHub and Pixabay. These audio textures help carry the memory, shape the emotional arc, and are honored with gratitude here.